The evening started well. A group of us friends had planned to meet at the Red Heart. Linda had told us they were going out to celebrate Jim's promotion. They planned to spend the night at the Red Heart, our best local hotel. It had big beds and a quiet atmosphere. No children around. I remembered what Denise and I had done in those beds before. I knew about Jim's promotion. Dee and David suggested we all join to help celebrate. I wasn't very eager, but I thought a fun night out could be good. Dee, as usual, arranged everything. She said she wouldn't tell Linda about our plans until the last moment like a surprise. The six of us were Dee and her husband David, Edward, and Jane, and me, Stephen, with my wife Denise. We had been friends for years. All the men liked playing golf, and the women did what women usually do together, shopping and chatting. Like any group, small annoyances happened. One was Dee trying to control all the plans. But mostly it worked. Dee and Linda had been friends since school. This time I didn't want to go much. I thought Jim and Linda should have their own night. But I didn't want to seem grumpy, so I agreed. I saw Jim and Linda walk in. We had their drinks ready on the table. Linda looked beautiful, and I probably shouldn't have said that out loud. Jim was a good-looking man. They made a nice couple. Jim started going across the dance floor, but Linda pulled him toward us. They stopped, spoke quietly, and then came over. Jim smiled, but it didn't seem real. He danced a couple of times with Linda, but when Dee asked him to dance, he said no. David wasn't a good dancer. I heard him say he was only dancing with Linda tonight, and they wouldn't stay much longer. He smiled, and Linda smiled shyly back. It was clear what they were thinking about that big, quiet bed at the hotel. They had been there about an hour when Jim stood up and took Linda's hand. She took it. Then, through the crowd, I saw someone I knew. Our local football star, Marcus Vail, was there. I wasn't a sports fan. I played golf, but mostly for the fresh air and walking. I heard Marcus loudly say, "The most beautiful woman in town is leaving so soon. Can I have one dance?" Linda looked at Jim and said, "Just one, please. It's Marcus Vail." Jim said something, but I couldn't hear it. Marcus took Linda onto the dance floor. Jim sat down, looking unhappy. I asked if he wanted a beer. He probably didn't, but I wanted to reach him to break through his sadness. He said he wouldn't have time, it was just one dance. Then Dee, as usual, got involved. She slid in next to Jim. "Oh, come on, don't be grumpy. It's only one dance, and besides, it's Marcus Vail." I looked around at our friends. They were smiling, but something felt wrong. This was Jim and Linda's night. Suddenly, Jim saw they were on their second dance, and it was a slow one. He stood up, ready to leave their seat. Dee stopped him. "Don't go. I'll talk to her." Before Jim could say anything, she walked over to where Linda was dancing with Vail. I saw them talking. Dee gently touched Linda's arm and then came back. "Just one more," Dee said to Jim. But it wasn't just one more. When the next slow dance started, Jim stood up again and walked toward Linda and Vail. Before he could reach them, two men stepped between him and the couple. I don't know what happened next, but Jim returned looking very angry. The two men stayed close behind him as he nearly got back to the table. David, Edward, and Jane began talking about how lucky Jim was. Maybe Linda would get tickets for the next game if she played her part right. Jim sat down but looked more and more upset. He stood again when Linda and Vail came over. Vail had his arm around her waist and wore a proud smile. Linda looked at Jim and said, "Just one night, sweetheart. Then he'll be back with you for the rest of our lives." She turned and walked away with Vail. As she left, she looked back, smiled, and said, "He'll see you in the morning. It's just one night. I love you." I was shocked. She had just ruined her marriage. I had known Jim for a long time, longer than Linda had. He wouldn't accept this. I don't understand how, even for a moment, she thought she could get away with it. Maybe Dee had convinced her. Dee stepped in front of Jim. "It's just one night. Let her have one night and she'll come back. She'll make it right." It's Marcus Vail. David and Edward moved out of the seat to stand beside Dee. David put his hand on Jim's shoulder. Edward stood in front of Jim, blocking his way. "Come on, mate, it's just one night," David said. That only made Jim more angry. He looked at David and said, "So it would be okay if Dee went off with him and they spent the night together? You would accept that?" David stopped himself in time before saying something harsh. He looked at Dee. "You wouldn't do that, would you?" There was silence. Dee's face said plenty. She might have done just that. Then Jim realized what he had just said. He had basically called Linda and his wife dishonorable. By then, David had a firm hold on Jim's elbow, and Edward was standing just behind him. That didn't stop him. He pulled his arm free from David and quickly turned, knocking Edward to the floor. Then he stormed across the dance floor toward the exit. He almost made it when Vale's two tough friends showed up again. Jim didn't stand a chance. The shorter one stood close to Jim, and Jim fell down holding his side. I guessed he had been hit. The two stood over him and said something. The taller one helped him up, turned him around, and pushed him back toward our table. Jim moved toward us, looking unsteady. By then, Denise had her phone out, recording everything. Jim fidgeted with his hands. When he reached our table, he looked at us and said, "You're not my friends anymore. Give this to the cheating woman." He threw his wedding ring onto the table. It rolled for a few seconds, and we all stared at it. Jim then turned and headed for the exit again. This time, he looked like nothing would stop him. I didn't know what he planned to do. The two tough guys saw him coming and blocked his way. It wasn't fair. "Get out of his way," I said. "I want to help him. He doesn't deserve this." Denise grabbed my arm, pulling me back as I tried to stand. I gave her a hard look. Did she know what was going on? Was she part of this? She let go but kept recording. "Leave it alone. There's nothing you can do," Edward said. I tried to slide out of the booth, but they stopped me. David sat next to me, pushing me back by the shoulder. I wasn't going to let it go. People nearby were noticing the trouble and looking toward Jim as he hurried toward the two goons. He would need help. I tried to stand again, but the table was in the way. Grabbing the edge, I tipped the whole table over. Drinks and glasses spilled everywhere. I saw Jim's wedding ring spin across the floor. Everything went quiet. Even the band stopped playing. The silence was so loud. Everyone stared at me as I stepped over the fallen table and moved to help Jim. Jim used my distraction to get past the two tough guys, though one tried to trip him. He got up and kept going toward the exit. I caught up as he reached the hotel door. He pulled out his phone and started dialing. I thought he was calling Linda, but it went straight to voicemail. I looked at him and said, "Come on, we have to follow them." He looked back and said, "It's too late for that. I'm going home to pack. She can do what she wants. It's over." "No, please," I said. "Do this as a favor to me. Help me stop my little sister from making things worse." Because Linda was my little sister. If she kept going, her marriage was already over and her life would fall apart even more. Mom and Dad would not accept it. She worked in the family kitchen and bathroom business, selling and installing. She wouldn't be out late. "Why should I?" he said sharply. "As a favor to me and for Sean and Carrie," I replied. He looked at me, frowning. "Don't use my kids against me. Come on then, we're wasting time." We ran to my car. I saw the red lights of Vale's Lamborghini in the distance. Its lights were easy to recognize. My Ford Focus could keep up with the Lamborghini unless he really pushed it. I had driven there with Edward and Jane. Edward didn't like driving his Overfinch Land Rover in the rain. We had planned to take a taxi home, all four of us. I was probably over the limit for driving, but I was ready to take the risk for my little sister. I had crossed the line for her before, but if she went ahead with this, it would be the last time. I helped her with her homework. I fixed her bike. That's what big brothers do for little sisters they love. I remembered when she wanted to date Kevin Fanshawe. Dad warned her hard against it, but she was 18 and old enough to decide. Dad said he wasn't a good person. There were many bad stories about him. Fanshawe had a bad boy image that some girls found exciting. One Saturday, I got a call to pick her up. She was crying. She had gone out with Fanshawe, and because she didn't agree to what he wanted, he had left her far away from home. I went and got her. She cried all the way back. Her dress was all messed up. She asked me not to tell Dad. I didn't, but my friends and I said a few firm words to Fanshawe. He never bothered her again. After that, Linda usually listened to Dad's advice. I had known Jim for a long time. We went to school together, though we were in different classes. We met in the woodwork club. Jim got an apprenticeship as a carpenter. A few years after finishing it, he started working for Mom and Dad's business, Beaumont Kitchens and Bathrooms, as a fitter. That was where he met Linda. They got along right away. Jim helped bring Linda out of her shell. She had been quiet after the Fanshawe incident, even though it happened years ago. I know they weren't each other's first loves, but they grew close. They married 2 years later. I watched them over time. My little sister grew into a strong woman. They loved each other, and it showed in everything they did. They had 2 lovely kids, Sean, who was 10, and Carrie, who was 9. Old Ted, our main fitter, was retiring, and Jim was set to take his place. The new role meant Jim would fix tricky problems and spend more time in the showroom. Dad told me they were training him to be second in command when Mom and Dad retired and I took over. He was trustworthy and capable. He understood the situation. This was very unusual for Linda, not like her at all. I knew Jim well enough to know he would not accept this. Their marriage was clearly over. Jim and I got into the car. I started the engine and focused on the tail lights fading ahead. I hadn't even put on my seatbelt yet. Jim reached over and buckled it for me. It was a bit tricky with arms and belts tangled, but we managed. Then he put his on too, which stopped the annoying buzzing noise. As I followed the Lamborghini, I said to Jim, "Call the incident line at the Journal. Tell them there's something happening at Marcus Vale's place." The Journal was our local newspaper. I heard Jim tell the person that things might get rough. They didn't ask where Vale's place was. They probably already knew. We didn't. But we knew where the fancy people in the city lived, and this was the right area. Vale was careful, driving within the speed limit and signaling properly. Maybe he didn't want to be stopped by the police. He was easy to follow once I caught up to him. I had bad thoughts about what might be going on inside that car, but then I remembered the middle console was quite big, so some things wouldn't fit. I told Jim to get his phone and start recording, then put the phone in his shirt pocket with the camera facing out. He didn't say a word, but did as I asked. After that, I noticed he was holding his side. That punch must have hurt. The gate. As I followed Vale, I drove carefully so I wouldn't get stopped either. I changed the lights on the car using side lights and fog lights so I would look different in his mirror when we turned corners, if he looked at all. I thought he'd have electric gates at his house. When he drove through, I planned to follow behind, and Jim and I would confront Linda. I hoped seeing Jim would make her calm down, but I had no idea what would happen. We might get in trouble for being on private property, but I didn't care much. A fine wouldn't be too bad. It would be worth it. I saw Vale slow down and signal left. There was a wall on our side with a strip of grass and some white rocks set along it. Then I saw lights turn on at the top of the wall and the gates began to open. I don't know what came over me, maybe the 4 pints I had earlier, but I pressed the gas and drove onto the grass, slipping between the gate and Vale's Lamborghini. I didn't block the driveway all the way. Before the cars stopped, Jim was already out of ours and gone. I turned the small camera I used on the dashboard as far as it would go, then tried to get out, but I couldn't open the door fully because Vale's car was too close. I managed to squeeze out but fell onto the wet ground. Oh no. My best suit was covered in mud and needed cleaning now. Linda would have to pay for that. I stood up and tried to steady myself. Vale was yelling at Jim, poking him in the shoulder. Jim just stood there quietly, not saying anything. Then I saw how much bigger Vale was compared to Jim. Vale looked angry. His face was red, and he was shouting so loud it showed clearly in the streetlights. Linda had gotten out of Vale's car and was shouting, "Jim, don't! Please stop!" Stop what? I wondered. Jim wasn't doing anything wrong. Then I saw it, the big punch Vale was about to throw at Jim. Jim probably saw it too because he moved to the side, but the punch still hit him on the face. He would have a bruise tomorrow. That hit was enough to bring Jim down. Vale moved his feet like he was about to kick Jim while he was on the ground. Not on my watch, I thought. I jumped up onto the hoods of the two cars and threw myself at Vale, just like in the movies. But I was a bit late. Vale's left foot connected with Jim, but Jim had rolled away, so it hit his leg instead. He kept rolling. I wondered if we could get half off at the cleaners for one of my suits. I landed on Vale, and we both fell to the ground, with me on top. He let out a scream. Then I rolled off and stood up. Linda was now beside the cars, crying as she looked at the two men on the ground. Who would she turn to? If it wasn't Jim, she was in big trouble. Vale was yelling and holding his shoulder. As he moved, I saw the white-painted rock he had landed on when I fell on him. Linda hurried to Jim. He still hadn't said a word. That was so like him. From the shadows, I saw a young woman coming closer, holding up her phone. She had a big label that said, "Press," on her jacket. I guess she was from the local newspaper. "Someone should call an ambulance for Mr. Vale," she said calmly. I took out my phone and dialed 999. I had to ask the woman for the address because I had no idea where we were. While we waited, she told me her name was Susan Black, and she worked for the Journal. She asked me what had happened. I gave her a quick version of the story. She asked if she could contact me later for an interview. I said okay and gave her my number. I also asked if she could send me a copy of her recording because things were about to get messy. She thought for a moment and agreed. Susan walked over to Jim. He was now standing, holding his face inside, leaning against my car. I saw Linda try to get close to him, but he pushed her away and turned his back. She stood there crying. The reporter didn't get much from Jim, but I saw him take her card. She typed something into her phone I guessed she was putting in his number. The paramedics arrived in about 15 minutes and took a crying Vale away. One of them looked at Jim and suggested he go to the hospital to check his ribs. Jim just made a quiet sound. I didn't think his pain was physical. I was surprised the police hadn't shown up yet. No one here had called them, and Vale was not in a good state. I thought someone would have called the police with all the cars driving by and the back of Vale's Lamborghini sticking over the road. But it was not my problem. I managed to get my car off the side of the road and told Jim and Linda to get in. They did. Jim sat in the front and Linda, still crying, sat in the back. She kept trying to touch Jim, but he pushed her hand away each time. I called Denise. She said everything got out of control in the ballroom just after we left. She took a taxi home soon after it started. She asked me what was going on. I said I was bringing Jim and Linda to our place. She told me to get the tea ready. We stopped at a red light just after entering the town center. Jim still hadn't said a word. Then he looked at me and said, "You asked for my help. I gave it to you. I'm leaving." He unbuckled his seatbelt, opened the door, got out, and walked away. The green light came on, and the cars behind started to get impatient. It seemed best to let Jim calm down. Then Linda shouted, "Jim!" But he had already disappeared down a nearby street. I decided I would track him on his phone later. When I got home, Denise was waiting. She helped Linda inside and quietly asked, "Where's Jim?" I told her Jim got out of the car and walked away, but I would find him. Linda sat on the sofa, crying and saying, I'm sorry. I wondered what she meant by that. Denise gave Linda a cup of tea and made her drink it. Tea wasn't going to fix everything, but it might help. Linda seemed a little calmer. I tracked Jim's phone. He was at the hotel. That wasn't good. I had to decide if I should go help Jim or stay with my little sister. I asked Denise. She said Jim might need help with all the trouble that had started in the ballroom after we left. The police had shown up there because a couple of fights had broken out. David and Dee were involved. That might explain why no police were at Vale's place. They were all at the Red Hart. I had to be careful if I drove again. Even with all the adrenaline, I was probably still over the limit. I tried to call a taxi, but there were none available anywhere, so I decided to drive anyway. I kept tracking Jim's phone. After about 15 minutes, I saw he was leaving the hotel. It looked like he was going home, and by his speed, he was probably driving. I reached his house before he did. I saw him drive into his driveway, get out of the car, and go inside. After I saw the lights turn on, I called him, but he didn't answer. So I sent a message. "I'm here for you, just call me." He replied, "Thanks." At least he answered. I went home and found Denise had helped Linda into bed. I made myself a large gin and tonic. Then I asked Denise, "Why did you try to stop me from helping Jim?" Because with Vale and his two friends, it was 3 against 2. Ed and Dave wouldn't help. I needed you to help me with Jim. Sorry if it looked bad. Did you know this would happen? No, I don't think anyone did. I heard later that Vale is no longer welcome at Morrison's because of a fight there a few weeks ago, so he started going to the Red Hart after games instead. That might explain why there were no police at Vale's place. He probably isn't welcome at the Red Hart now either. I was really tired. It was time for bed, ready for the chaos the next day would bring. I took Denise's hand and led her upstairs. Saturday by morning, Linda seemed to be feeling better. I was already downstairs making coffee, something simple I was allowed to do in the kitchen. "Stephen, can you take me home, please? Jim isn't answering his phone. I need to see him. I made a big mistake. I want to explain, and I want my babies." She could have walked home, but I think she wanted company. She might have been upset with me. I had already tried calling Jim with no answer. I told Linda I would take her home. When we got outside, I saw a dent in my car door. I must have bumped into Vale's Lamborghini when I got out. There was also a big footprint on my car's hood. I wondered if Vale's car had a similar mark. Probably. New parts for that car probably cost more than my whole car. Oh well. While we drove, Linda called the babysitter. Jim had already picked up Sean and Carrie earlier, which made her feel better. As we got close to their house, I heard her quietly say, "I really messed up, didn't I?" "I don't think you understand how bad it is yet," I said. We arrived, and Jim's car was in the driveway. I didn't block it in. As soon as I stopped, Linda jumped out and ran up the path. I followed her. When she went inside, Carrie ran up to her. "Mommy, why is Daddy crying?" she asked. "Mommy did something silly yesterday, and it made Daddy sad. Where is he?" "I don't know. He was packing his bag like when we go camping." "Are we going camping?" Just then I heard the back door close. A few seconds later, the gate in the garden squeak, and then Jim's car started and drove away. Linda just stood there, her face turning pale, her mouth open in shock. Now she was starting to see how badly she had messed up. I thought things were only going to get worse. She grabbed her phone and tried calling Jim, but he didn't answer. I used my phone to try to find him, but there was no signal. Jim only let me track him when he wanted me to. He was tricky like that. I stayed to help as much as I could. I tried to keep the children busy while Linda tried to figure things out. She called friends, but nobody knew anything. Neither David nor Dee answered their phones. I had an idea where Jim might be, but I didn't say anything. He needed some time to calm down. Jim was finishing a job in the next town for one of our better clients, the Hargreaves, a nice couple. Since they were on holiday, they had offered their house to Jim as a place to stay. I thought he might go there to finish the job and maybe spend the night. The children were playing in the backyard. I made coffee for Linda and myself. We sat at the kitchen table. She looked at me and asked, "What are you going to tell Mom and Dad?" I answered, "I think the real question is, what are you going to tell Mom and Dad?" Her face fell again. She still didn't understand just how much trouble she was in. This was only part of the problem. I was sure more was coming. It felt like a long road ahead. I had to leave early that afternoon. I had some videos to put on a memory stick because I was expecting a visit from the police. I asked Linda to go and talk to her parents before work started on Monday to explain things. I tried calling Jim again, but he didn't pick up. I sent him a text saying the kids were okay, Linda was not, and that he could reach out to me if he needed to. Denise told me a police car had stopped outside the house. I was ready when 2 officers came to the door. They introduced themselves and I offered them a drink, but they said no. They asked, "We believe you were involved in something that happened at Marcus Vale's home?" I told them, "Yes, and also something at the Red Hart, but not the event you're thinking of, one that happened earlier. I have a video." They looked surprised. They didn't know about the Red Hart part. I explained everything from when Jim and Linda arrived to when I drove Linda back to our house. I left out how much I had been drinking. I gave them the memory stick and said I could show them the original video to prove it wasn't edited. As we watched the hotel incident, One officer asked what happened when Jim fell. I said I didn't know, but I thought someone might have hit him. They looked at each other because it was clear that one of the men had tripped Jim when he tried to leave. I showed them the dash cam video. It was a bit hard to see, but you could clearly see Vale poking Jim and Jim getting hit. The video did not show Jim being kicked because it happened below the front of my car, but Vale's body showed it. I could be seen jumping on Vale, but then we both disappeared below the car's front. I told the police there was a journalist from the Journal there. They said Miss Black had given them information for their investigation. They also said they had talked to Linda and heard her side, but she did not know where Jim was. They really wanted to speak to him. "Do you know where Mr. Northover is?" one asked. "We have his number, but he's not answering." "No, he won't answer my calls. His tracker is off, but he does answer texts. He'll see what I can do." I sent Jim a text. "The police need to talk to you. It's probably a good idea to tell your side. You have a video. I've given them what I have. Please call me." Jim called me a few seconds later. There was no small talk. "Put them on the phone." He sounded rough. I passed the phone to one of the officers. I couldn't hear what was said, but I think he gave them an address. The police thanked me and left. Denise and I went to see Linda. She was barely holding herself together and nearly in tears. She kept whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over. Carrie was very upset and didn't understand what was going on. I told her parents had a misunderstanding and were trying to fix it. You can't explain a tough situation like that to a 9-year-old. Carrie asked where her dad was and when he would come home. I didn't have an answer. That hurt. We loved those kids. We didn't have kids of our own, so we cared for them a lot. I sent Jim a text. "The kids are suffering. Please think of them." He replied, "Tell Linda to let the kids answer the phone in 5 minutes. She shouldn't answer it. I don't want to speak to her." Then another text came. Yet, maybe he was starting to calm down or realizing he had to face this soon. Linda did as he asked. The children seemed a bit better. I know Linda wanted to take the phone away, but the kids asked her the question she wanted answered. "When is Jim coming home?" He told them next week, maybe Wednesday. He said he had some things to take care of first. We waited until the children went to bed, then we went home. Linda seemed a little happier now that she knew Jim would come home this week. But I felt that this was just the start of more problems for her. Sunday, the interview. I got a phone call from the journalist who had been at Vale's place on Friday. She wanted to do an interview. She said she had already talked to Jim. I wondered how she found him. She said it was easy, she just followed the police car, but she would not tell me where Jim was. I didn't ask. I was pretty sure he was at the Hargreaves house, but I wanted to give him some space. There were already enough people bothering him. She came over in the afternoon. It seemed she had also spoken with Linda. We were the last ones on her list. I told her the same story I told the police. I even gave her copies of the videos. She said she would send me a copy of the video she took, but it was edited. That made me worry a little, but she calmed me down. She said, "It shows a possible attack on Mr. Northover in public. I also have his recording. Mr. Northover told me almost the same story." "Thanks. Now we just have to wait and see what happens after what Linda did." "Are you saying she shouldn't have gone with Vale?" "No, she shouldn't have." "Are you saying she has to do what her husband and brother say?" "Not at all. She can do what she wants. But I don't think she thought about all the possible problems that could come from her actions. Jim also has the right to do what he wants. She probably thought Jim would forgive her because he loves her. She was wrong. He does love her, or did. I'm not so sure now. But he would not accept her leaving to be with another man, no matter how well known he was. Also, the bad news this would bring to the company would hurt the business a lot. It would damage our image as a family business, something Mom and Dad have worked hard for. And that's not even thinking about how embarrassing it would be for her to leave the hotel with another man. "So you tried to stop her? It sounds like you and Jim were telling her what to do." "No. I think we were like knights trying to help someone caught up in a tough situation. But if she kept going, that was her choice, and she would have to deal with what happened after. When Dad finds out, he will probably move her away from the customers to keep the family image going." "Did it help?" Miss Black asked. "Probably not. But in moments like that, you don't think clearly. We might have made things worse. Still, we are a family company with family values. Leaving the hotel with another man in front of all those people would not sit well with Mom and Dad." At least she didn't go further with Vale. She wouldn't be fired, but she might have to look for another job. Well then, who are we strict men or knights trying to help? You'll have to wait until Thursday when the paper comes out to find out, she said with a smile. I have to check with my editor, but I don't think you will be surprised. She was a reporter. I didn't believe her at all. Monday at work, I got to work early. I saw Mom and Dad arrive, and they were smiling. I didn't think Linda had told them anything. They wouldn't be happy if they knew what happened on Friday and over the weekend. When they saw my face, they knew something was wrong. Have you talked to Linda lately? I asked. No. What's going on? Is everyone okay? How are Jim and the kids? Is Linda all right? Mom asked. We all met at the Red Heart, and something bad happened, Mom, I said. I didn't know how much to tell them, but I had to say something to prepare them. We heard there was a fight at the Red Heart Friday night. Were you and Jim part of it? Dad asked. No, that was after Jim and I left. We don't know how it started. Now was the time to explain. I took a deep breath. Linda left the hotel with Marcus Vale. She just walked out and left Jim behind. She wouldn't do that. Why would you say that? Mom said, upset. Mom, why would I lie? Do you want to see the videos? Dad looked at me. He could tell I was telling the truth. What happened? He asked. Linda was asked to dance by the football player. After that, she said she was going home with him for the night. Jim and I followed Vale and Linda. We stopped her from doing something worse than she already had. Jim got hurt because of it. He left Linda, and we don't know where he is now. I told them I thought Jim went to the Hargreaves' place to work over the weekend. Being busy might help him forget what happened with Linda. If that's where he is, one of us should check his work. He turned off his phone's tracker, but he's still answering texts. We've talked with the police and the local reporter from the Journal. We'll have to wait until Thursday to see what's in the newspaper. Damn, Dad said quietly. He doesn't swear often. Then we heard a van arrive in the parking lot. I saw through the window it was Jim. We all rushed into the showroom to see him come in. He didn't give us a chance to talk. Have the cupboard handles for the Hargreaves place come in? I need them. You'll be done by Wednesday. By the looks on your faces, Stephen must have told you what happened. I can't stay here. You'll do the Smith's bathroom next week, then I'm done. You can take that as a month's notice. Honestly, I don't care. Now, can I have those handles, please? I want to leave before Linda gets here. I don't want to see her. My parents were shocked by how Jim acted. This wasn't like him. But none of us had been through what Jim had gone through. The bruise on his face was big, and his eye was badly swollen. He was holding his side and walking with a slight limp. Mom moved to hug him. I said, Mom, leave him alone. He's hurting right now and handling it the best way he can. I held my hands out toward him and said, We are here for you. If you need anything, just call me. He made a small sound showing he was not happy. Then he gave a weak smile and said, Thanks. Just send the things over to the Smith's house. You'll be staying at a bed and breakfast next week. He looked at Mom and Dad. When Linda gets home, tell her he'll pick up the kids from school, and she shouldn't come back until 6. I'm trying to see a lawyer about a divorce as soon as I can. He added, Sorry about the job. I would have liked it. Then he walked out and sat in the van. I grabbed some handles and took them to him. So that was it. Divorce was his plan. The other workers started arriving. Most of them already knew what was going on. A few new jobs were handed out by Mom. Everyone could tell something was wrong, and they all wanted to leave as soon as possible. Mom kept trying to call Linda, but there was no answer. We didn't expect her until 9:30, after the children were at school. Dad looked very angry, but I wasn't sure at who, so I asked him. Linda, of course, that silly girl. Why didn't Jim do more? He should have fought for her. Trust me, Dad, he did, I said. Denise took videos. Want to see them? Did you not see how hurt he was? He was holding his side and limping with that big black eye. When he tried to catch Linda and that footballer guy, he got hit and fell down. When he tried to follow them, some people tripped him. When we got to Vale's place, he was hit again. Vale is over 6 feet tall and a pro athlete. Jim is 5'8" and works as a kitchen fitter. What do you think would have happened if Linda had gone into that house? We had no idea when she would come out. Who would have looked after the kids the next day if Jim ended up in the hospital? I took out my phone, played the videos, and handed it to Dad. He took it and walked outside. I thought coffee would help, so I made a strong black one and waited for my sister. About half an hour later, Dad came back to me. He looked sad. He gave me the phone and said, "I'm sorry. You're right. Jim did all he could. Let me know when your sister gets home." The next hour and a half was awful. We had work to do, but no one cared. Linda arrived just after 10. You could see from her walk that she was very worried. As soon as she saw Mom and Dad's faces, she started to cry. It was clear that I had told them everything. Dad spoke in that low, serious voice we all knew from when we were kids and had upset him. "How are you going to fix the mess you've made?" Just then, the door opened and a couple came in. Great, just what we didn't need. I put on a brave face and told Mom and Dad to go to the office. This couple was there to finish up plans for their kitchen. I thought, I'd have to find a new fitter for that job since Jim was supposed to do it after finishing the Smith's bathroom. I didn't know what happened upstairs, but soon after the customers left, Linda came down the stairs. She looked at me, clearly upset. "You had to tell them, didn't you? Why did you do that?" I said, "It would have been better if you told them. You should have said something yesterday like I told you. They were going to find out anyway, so it's best if it comes from family. Since Jim was here, they would have learned from him sooner or later." She was angry at me, but really upset about her own mistake. "I was going to tell them. You didn't have to do it." I told her, "The time to say it was yesterday at home, not at work. Don't blame me for this. You've lost your husband, and I doubt Mom and Dad will want you to stay here. You might lose your job, and that means your house too. Was it worth the little time you thought you'd have?" I turned away before I said more. I heard the door shut behind her. Upstairs in the office, Mom looked at me. "I heard about the videos. This is not Jim's fault. What are we going to do? Linda's lost her husband. We can't have her working here anymore, so we'll have to move her somewhere else. And now, with Ted gone and Jim leaving too, we have one less fitter. What has she done?" I'd never heard Mom say a bad word like that before. Then she looked at me again. "Sorry. That's not the main thing right now. We need to focus on Sean and Carrie." I pulled a small box from my pocket. "Jim is missing a handle because I didn't give him all of them. Now that I know where he is, I'll deliver it to him and see what he's planning. Maybe we can all sit down and talk." I went to the Hargreaves place. I could hear machinery running inside. I waited until it was quiet before I walked in. Jim saw me and didn't say anything at first. He just held out his hand. I gave him the handle, and he took it. "I thought you would come by when I noticed one was missing, so what do you want? I want to finish this job as soon as I can." There was some instant coffee and milk, so I made 2 cups and sat down to talk with him. I asked if there was a way out of this mess. He said yes, divorce. He said he would really miss the children. They would figure out a way for him to see them. He also said he didn't expect Mom and Dad to turn their back on their daughter. He couldn't keep working there after the divorce. It was a shame because he would have liked the new job and been good at it. He enjoyed solving problems. He told me he had a meeting with a lawyer at 2 tomorrow afternoon. He said he would contact me after that if we needed to talk. He also said he wanted to pick the kids up from school so he could spend some time with them. He planned to do the same as before she would come in the front door and he would leave through the back. I asked if we could all meet sometime to find a way to fix things. He said it was over as soon as she walked away with Vale. I asked him to be open-minded and think about the children. I finished my coffee and got ready to leave. He followed me to the door. When I reached it, I turned and said, "Thanks for coming with me the other night, mate." He didn't look well. I asked, "How are you feeling?" He looked at me and said, "How do you think?" I said, "No, I mean your face, your ribs, and your limping." He lifted his shirt, and I saw a big bruise on his side near the lower ribs. The bruises on his face looked really bad. He lowered his pants a little, and his leg looked swollen. Bending his knee seemed painful. I suggested he see a doctor. He said he had stayed awake all night because of the pain. He had gone to the emergency room during the night. They took x-rays and told him he had 2 cracked ribs. The rest was bruises. They also took pictures of his injuries after he told them what had happened. I drove back to the office and told my mom that I had tried to set up a meeting, but he wasn't willing. The only way this could end was by divorce. I thought. I saw Linda's car in the parking lot, so she must have come back to work. In the afternoon, I found Linda. I told her what Jim had said about the kids. She wanted to be there when he picked them up so she could talk to him. I told her he needed space. I said I had spoken to him that morning. He was still very angry with her, so she should stay away when he brought the kids home from school. "Where is he?" "I want to talk to him." "He needs to come home," she said. "No, he needs time to clear his mind. If he tries to talk to you now, it might not go well. He's hurting, both in body and spirit." "If he loves me, he'll get over this." "Do you trust me?" "Yes, of course." "Well, Jim trusted you with his heart and it was broken. His heart might still care, but his mind isn't so sure after what happened. You need to give him space." "Look, it was only going to be one night. I know it was a mistake. I shouldn't have done it. But you and Jim can tell me what to do." "True, no one can make choices for you, but we all have to live with what comes after. Let's just call it the ripple effect." She was mad at me now. She said I was trying to control her life. I wanted to say, "But you haven't done a great job controlling it," but I kept quiet. I didn't want to make things worse. She stormed off to her office and closed the door tight. Tracy, our assistant, had figured out something was really wrong. Doors were rarely closed at work. Tracy left at 5 o'clock, her eyes red, like she'd been crying. She didn't say a word to me, just gave a small smile and left. Just before 6, Linda came out of her office and said, "Jim told me to go home. He's leaving out the back door while I go in the front like yesterday. He's a coward. Why won't he face me?" I lost my temper. His wife of 10 years left him with another man, looked at him and just smiled. He got hurt badly and is in pain. And you're making everyone else to blame? You're the one at fault. There's only one person to blame here, and it's you. Stop blaming others for what you did. She turned and stormed out. I think if the door hadn't had a closer, she would have ripped it off the frame. Jim called me just after 7. He asked if we could meet, just the two of us. His house was close to a pub in the country, so he suggested we meet there. He said he didn't want to talk in anyone else's home. He was upset. He told me he'd talked to some friends who went through divorce, and it scared him. If he went ahead with the divorce, he could lose a lot. He might not see his kids grow up. He would only see them on weekends. It could cost him half his salary or more. He might have to find a smaller place to live. Even after everything, he still loved Linda. I just listened as he spoke honestly. He said he'd lose the kids and his home. He'd worked hard on the house with some help from me. He and Linda loved that house, but they were probably going to lose it. Still, the house would sell for a good price because of the work he had done. I went to get more beer. While waiting, I thought back to the good times we had at that house. Me and Jim built the extension ourselves, using supplies we got cheap because of Denise's job at the builder's yard. I think the money we saved was spent on beer. When I came back with the beer, he looked like he'd been thinking a lot. He asked me if, after he went to see his lawyer, we could arrange a family meeting. He didn't care where, as long as the children were not involved. He would pick them up after school and do the same handover as yesterday. I told him I would try to arrange it as we walked back to the Hargreaves place. He had asked me to check over the installation. He thought he hadn't missed anything, but he had been a bit distracted. I said I didn't see anything clearly wrong, but I would come by later for a final look. He smiled and said that was probably a good idea. When I got home, Denise told me she had been to Jim and Linda's house to look after the children while Mum took Linda out for a talk. I really wished I could have seen that. Denise said she thought Mum had given Linda a serious talking to, judging by how Linda was acting. This whole situation was making everyone in our family start to swear more than usual. The family meeting on Tuesday, I set the meeting for 7 o'clock at our parents' house and told Jim he had a key. Linda, Mum, Dad, and I were there early. Denise was at our house with Sean and Carrie, but she was on the phone. The doorbell rang. I guess Jim wouldn't use his key. As Dad opened the door, Linda moved quickly toward it. Jim stood back and then closed the door in front of him. The letter flap opened, and we heard him say, "Keep her away from me." Linda began to cry but nodded and sat next to Mum. I went to the door and opened it this time. Jim came in. He held out his hand and I shook it. It was a bit formal but felt like we were still friends. Jim walked into the middle of the kitchen. Mum and Linda sat side by side. Dad and I stayed standing. I talk, you listen, Jim said. When I leave, you can talk and decide what to do. I raised my hand. Denise is listening on the phone, so I think it's only fair to tell you. He just nodded, and then started speaking, clearly angry. That woman, he said, pointing toward Linda. My soon-to-be ex-wife. That made Mum and Linda gasp. She left me in front of our friends. She didn't respect me, didn't care about me, and humiliated me. And she just smiled as she walked away. She may not have done something serious with him, but she would have if Stephen and I hadn't stopped her. To me, that feels just as bad. I went to see a lawyer, and as I thought, I'm not going to get much help. He took a deep breath. I see 3 choices. First, I could just disappear and trust me. That is tempting. But that would be foolish, and I would miss my children every day. If I divorce her, that also has its appeal. But the problem is I'd end up living alone in a poor place, see the kids less, and probably lose my job. I might find work as a fitter somewhere else, but I'd have to start again at the bottom. I will probably lose the house I worked so hard for and love so much. She will find another man, and the kids will call him Dad, not me. I can't stand that. He took a deep breath. The third choice is to put up with it and move back in. Linda quickly covered her mouth with her hands. Mom reached over and took her hand. Dad just stood there, surprised. None of us saw this coming. But there are conditions, he said. You will have to talk about them when I leave. Anything you say, Linda replied. She was about to say more, but Jim's angry look stopped her. Post-nup agreements are more common now, he said. My lawyer says they aren't legally perfect but can help. If she signs one and breaks it, that could count as breaking a contract. Here's the deal. We split our things half and half now. We keep separate bank accounts. We both put money into a house account but keep our own money. If she is unfaithful, I get the house and the children because she hasn't kept her promises. When I married her, I gave my all to her. She hasn't done the same for me. I don't know how she can show she has. I know it's unfair, but I don't care. I don't own her. She can do what she wants. She showed that last Friday. But if she spends time closely with another man without my okay, that's the end. She has to commit fully to me and the children, but she doesn't own me either. I will make my own choices. If she can't accept that, then I'm choosing option 1, just leaving. She can handle things on her own. I'm sure you will help with the mortgage. One of us leaves the business. I will come back to work, but not if she's still there. By the way, she will move into the spare bedroom. She was the one who wanted to be close to another man. She can have her own space without me there. Linda cried even harder than before. Mum leaned over to her and whispered something that seemed to calm her a little. Mum asked, "Why does she have to leave? I don't see a reason. We are all family here, you included. It's a family business. It won't be the same without her." I understand that, Jim said quietly. It's the smile she used to give customers, the smile she gave me, and the same smile she had when she walked away with that man, his arm around her. Every time I see it, I remember that night. As the head fitter, I mostly worked from the office, and I didn't want to see that smile every time a customer came in or when something made her happy. I couldn't stop her from smiling. I loved that smile, but now it just hurt to see it. I knew next year would be hard no matter what came next, but now I was thinking about me, Sean, and Carrie first. Linda was much lower on the list. Actually, her work was even more important than her. Also, I didn't want to be near her at work or at home. He sighed. At one time, I was looking forward to being with her. Linda opened her mouth to say something. Jim pointed his finger at Linda and spoke sharply. I haven't finished. Don't say a word, or I'm out of here. That's option 1. He took 2 envelopes from his pocket and threw them on the table. The yellow one is a draft prenuptial agreement. Call it what you want. We can change some parts, but the main points won't change. The white one is a divorce paper if we can't agree on the prenuptial. I've already signed it. Dad spoke quietly. Okay, Jim. I think we can figure this out. Have you thought about marriage counseling? Yes, I have. Because I want to know what she was thinking when she just left me. It might help, but I'm not paying for it. I didn't do anything wrong. Then he showed his anger clearly. Or maybe I did, by not being a famous football player or a celebrity. Maybe I failed by being just average, by not being good enough. Call me when you decide. Don't wait too long. You'll be at the Hargreaves until I finish in 2 days. Then I move on to the Smith's bathroom for about 3 days. I want an answer by the time I finish at Hargreaves, so I can start looking for jobs if you don't accept my terms. Jim leaned forward, resting his hands on the kitchen table, looking at Linda. The problem is, if I just take this and come back, you get away with it. You basically get away with cheating. I want to make you feel the hurt and the pain you caused me, the children, and your family. He waved his hand around, including us. I want you to understand how bad it feels, but there's nothing I can do, so you get away with it. You can do anything, sweetheart. Anything, Linda said quietly. Dad came over and put his hand on Jim's shoulder. Jim looked tired and low. Son, I'm afraid that's just how forgiveness works, Dad said softly. I didn't mind when Dad called Jim son. It made me feel like we were more like brothers. Dad added, I'm sure you'll work it out. When you finally put her in place, don't hurt your hand. He said it lightly, trying to lighten the mood. It kind of worked. Thanks, Dad. You'll try to remember that. Jim gave a small smile. Linda opened her mouth to speak again, but Mother quickly took her hand. She held it tightly, and Linda closed her mouth. Tears ran down her cheeks. Jim just turned and walked out the front door. He had made his point. We all stayed quiet, shocked by what had just happened. Denise was the first to break the silence, speaking softly on the phone. He's offering peace. Now it's up to you to decide what to do. My wife was right. We stayed up late talking. Linda didn't say much. We had to calm Dad down because he didn't like being caught off guard. He wasn't angry at Jim, but at Linda. Mom was sure Linda wouldn't leave the business. She was important to the company. We could promote someone else to take Jim's place if he left, but she understood Jim's feelings. Dad was firm that Jim should stay. This was not Jim's fault, and he should not face more trouble for Linda's actions. Jim was the best person for the job. Dad and Mom also said they would pay for counseling to help with everything. Denise had an idea. Linda could work from our house. We had a small office in one of the bedrooms. It was big enough for both Tracy and Linda to do the accounting. It wouldn't be easy and things might be awkward. Then Mom suggested another option. There was a small office for rent not far from our showroom and warehouse. Linda could still come in when needed, but she would no longer deal directly with customers and would not be on the sales team. It was late at night when we finally came to these decisions. We had drunk a lot of tea. I think Denise had some wine when she got home. Dad looked at me and said, You seem to get along with Jim. Can you visit him tomorrow at the Hargreaves place? Tell him Linda will not leave the company. Her contacts and the relationships she has built over the years are too important. We're sorry for the trouble. She is too valuable to lose. Jim is the best for the job. I was to offer Jim 2 possibilities. Linda and Tracy could work from our home, or we could rent the office nearby. In either case, Linda would not work in sales anymore. Jim would have to take on those duties when he was in the office. On Wednesday morning, just before 10, I went to the Hargreaves house. I knew Jim usually had tea around that time. I made the tea and even brought some chocolate biscuits, his favorite. I didn't waste time. I knew this would be a hard talk, telling him that his wife was more important to the company than he was. Jim, I began, there is no easy way to say this. Because of Linda's knowledge of accounting and the strong relationships she has with our suppliers, my parents won't let her go. But they do understand how you feel. They are not going to fire her, but they will ask her to leave the building. She will no longer be part of the sales team. Mom is thinking about renting an office just down the street for Linda and Tracy. Or maybe they could work from our home until they find a place. But Dad wants them nearby so he can help with any problems quickly, not just over video calls. She will need to meet customers sometimes. The goal is to follow your wishes and avoid tension when she does her sales work. What do you think? He looked into his tea, picked up a chocolate hobnob, waved it at me, and said, I knew it was bad when you brought these. Then he dipped it in the tea, which was really gross, and it did not look good. But then he surprised me. I understand completely, and I agree. He looked at me and said, I told you it would need some careful handling. He smiled. I smiled back and realized what he had done. You tricked us. That's how you planned it, wasn't it? to make us choose about your marriage, to see if family ties are stronger, so did we pass the test? I never thought you would let Linda go for all the reasons you just said. But were you going to choose her over me? The answer is yes, you did, and I expected that. But you did your best with everything else I asked for. So yes, you passed the test. I agree with your dad that they should be close. But if you can't find a place yet, I will set up your home office until you find one nearby. I will put up a big TV in the office so they can join meetings by WebEx or Zoom if needed. He dunked another chocolate hobnob. The chocolate broke apart on the tea. Gross. While you're here, you better do a last check. I will get the prenup changed and take it to the office before I finish today. I want everyone to agree to it. After that, I will go home with Linda. He looked down at his messy tea. I miss the kids. This is going to be hard on them no matter what. I did my last check. It was just as expected, a great job. He was cleaning up as I left. He was vacuuming the kitchen floor. Before I went, I said, Dad agreed to pay for counseling. We don't know who to choose yet. We will have to ask around. Yes, he said. I know your dad called me. He's been looking into it and has some ideas. Jim got to the office just after 4 o'clock. Tracy guessed something was happening, so she went downstairs to the showroom while we gathered in Mom and Dad's office. Jim took a new envelope and put it on the table. Linda grabbed it first, even though Dad was reaching for it. She took out the paper and looked Jim straight in the eyes. Is this fair? She asked, holding up the sheet of paper. Not really, Jim said. But if you do something like that again, or if you betray me, there will be trouble. Do you still love me? Linda asked. Mom gasped. Yes, Jim replied. I love you too, she said. Without looking at the paper, she signed it and gave it back to Jim. Then she looked at us and said, This is my choice. I trust him. I was the one who made a mistake. I'm going home early tonight. I need to change bedrooms. She turned to Jim. The kids are excited to see you. I'll put some pizzas in the oven for dinner so you can spend time with them. As she left, the tension in the room seemed to ease. It looked like things might be okay, but nothing is sure. Newspaper article. I went to work early on Thursday and picked up a local paper on the way. I didn't look at it right away, just in case the news was bad. I made a strong cup of tea and sat down at my desk to read the headlines. Local footballer faces consequences. There is a police inquiry about an incident involving Marcus Vale, a local football player. The newspaper cannot say much because the case is still open, but they can share what happened before the incident. This reporter has seen video of what led up to the event, and this has been given to the football club's board. The police are not looking into that earlier event. Marcus Vale left the Red Heart pub with the wife of a local craftsman. This reporter wants to say that who she chooses to leave with is her own decision. Her husband and her brother agree with this. The husband thought Marcus Vale had influenced her and that she didn't fully understand what might happen. He tried to follow her to remind her of her family duties and what could happen if she kept going. Two of Vale's teammates, Harry Jenkins and Ismail Kasuro, stopped the husband from leaving the pub. There was a photo in the paper showing a person lying on the floor with two people standing nearby. This was a still from the video Denise took. The paper said nothing more. The Red Heart tried to stop the picture from being published, but the paper's lawyers said there's no right to privacy in a public place like that. There were no signs saying photos weren't allowed. The husband's brother helped him leave the pub. They followed Vale to talk to the wife again about what might happen. Thanks to a tip from someone nearby, this reporter was there when the next event occurred. I can say that Marcus Vale was taken to the hospital by ambulance. Other people involved were told by the paramedics to go to the hospital, but they chose not to. The police were called to the Red Heart after this picture was taken. It seems a small fight started on the dance floor because of a spilled drink. The police will not take any more action on this case. This newspaper feels it should support the police and has given them all the video evidence we have about Marcus Vale. Marcus Vale, Harry Jenkins, and Ismail Kasuro have not said anything on the advice of their lawyers. The City Football Board will make a statement once they have all the information and finish their own review. I will share more about the investigation when the police release details. I sighed, knowing that local police and football politics were involved. Also, the newspaper wanted to make the story bigger to get more readers and maybe sell it to bigger media. At least our business was not mentioned yet. Marriage guidance things seemed to calm down at the Northover home as far as we could tell. There was still some tension, but it looked like it was getting better. Jim stopped being angry every time she came in, though she didn't smile either. Mom, Dad, Denise, and I visited Sean and Carrie. Sometimes they seemed okay. Sean once asked why Mummy was sleeping in a different bedroom from Daddy. I knew the story they told the children, so I explained it to him carefully. After much thought, Jim and Linda agreed to see a counselor. Today was their first session. It was going to last 2 hours, so Mom and Denise picked the children up from school and brought them to work. We had a play area for customers' children to use while we talked about kitchens or bathrooms. From the look on Jim's face, it did not go well. I hoped they had chosen the right counselor. Linda did not seem happy either. I wanted to ask how the session had gone, but I thought it was better not to. If they wanted to talk, they would. Later, Jim walked past me in the showroom. "Beer tonight, 7 o'clock, the Plow. Bring Denise if you like. It might help." I just nodded and called Denise. When we arrived, Jim was already there with our drinks. Denise sat next to Jim. I took a drink and braced myself. "Okay, tell us what happened. You looked like you were about to burst when you came in." He told us the counselor asked what each of them hoped to get from the sessions. Linda went first. She said she wanted to go back to how things were before. She wanted to sleep in the same room again and feel like a proper wife. She said she had made a mistake and was ready to do whatever it took to fix it. She explained that she had signed the post-nup agreement without even reading it because she trusted Jim. Jim told the counselor that he wanted to understand why she did it, why she thought it was okay to leave in front of their family and friends. He felt she had disrespected and embarrassed him. She had left the ballroom with another man, not her husband, and planned to go to his place for the night. Jim wondered how she could think that was right when she came home. Jim said Linda was crying by then. He admitted she had been crying quite a lot lately. Linda told him this was a dream come true for her. Since she was a little girl, she had imagined being swept off her feet by a celebrity. That dream had gone away when she met Jim, but it came back when Vale approached her. She thought Jim loved her enough to allow her this one night of fantasy, but now she knows it was wrong. It was a mistake, and she should not have done it. Jim told me he never knew Linda had this kind of dream. She kept it to herself, so it was a surprise to him. If he had known, he would have found a way to make her feel that way himself. Now he felt sad that she had dreams she did not share with him, even though he had shared his dreams with her. I reminded him that Linda said she did not have those dreams when she met him. He had made her happy, but Jim still felt sad that she did not tell him about this dream. "I know what I heard her say," he said, "but I'm not sure I believe it. Maybe you'll think more about it when we go back in 2 days. He took a sip of his beer and looked at his empty glass. "Sometimes it's the things she doesn't say," he added. Then he got up and went to the bar to get more drinks. Denise didn't say anything. She just looked sad and glanced at me. "I think they might need more than just a counselor. Maybe family," she said quietly. I agreed with her. We talked but didn't give advice. Mostly we just listened. Jim shared what was on his mind. He said he was looking forward to his private meeting with the counselor next week, but wasn't eager for the one with both of them in 2 days. He said he had managed to keep calm so far, but it was getting harder. We gave him a ride home. When we went inside, we said a quick hello to Linda. She looked sad, but hugged Denise and me and said, "Thank you." I think she meant for listening to Jim and for being there in general. The next day at work, I got a message from Linda. Tracy had gone to the warehouse, and Linda asked if I could come to her office. She said she had something to ask me. She knew Jim was in the showroom and didn't want to come over there. When I got to her office, Linda apologized for taking her anger out on me. She said she was wrong. Mom heard Linda talking to me and told her some hard truths. Linda felt awful, like she was stuck between 2 bad choices. "How is Jim doing?" "Yesterday was tough for him," Linda asked. "He's not doing well," I said. "He was upset that you had a daydream that didn't include him and that you kept to yourself. Now he's wondering if when you were making love, you were thinking about him or someone else." "No, it was always him," Linda said. "It was only when Marcus came near me that all those feelings came back quickly." I looked at her seriously. "You called him Marcus. Are you seeing him or still thinking about him?" She looked surprised. No, Jim and I haven't, well, yet, but Marcus hasn't been on my mind at all." She looked down at her hands. "My mind is full of the pain I caused Jim. and I'm trying to figure out how to fix things with him, because right now, I feel like I've lost him." She started to cry. "I don't think the counseling is working." I went over and held her until she calmed down. When Tracy came back, Linda had stopped crying, but Tracy could see something was wrong. I told Linda to call me or Denise any time. The next counseling session was 2 days away. Jim came back early from his session. About 45 minutes later, Linda arrived in a taxi. That didn't feel good. I thought Jim would call me to go out for a drink, but it was Linda who called. She sounded bad and asked if she could come over. I told Denise to make sure there was wine in the fridge. Linda knocked, and when I opened the door, she looked exhausted. I let her in, and Denise had a glass of wine ready. Linda drank it quickly. "I don't think we're going to make it," she said. "I think Jim wants to leave me. He was really angry today." I looked at Denise, who said, "We thought you two were getting better. Things seem to be improving." "So did I," Linda said, "but he got really upset today about how I left him that night. We know he's still hurt that you didn't tell him about your daydreams from the past, but you said you didn't have them after meeting him. With counseling, he will work through that. We thought you told him you didn't mean to hurt or disrespect him. You just got lost in your thoughts. We thought he was starting to understand." "No, it's worse," Linda said. "Something I did to try to make him feel better only made things worse. He has been trying to hold it in, but he can't. Do you remember when I was leaving, I turned and said, 'He'll see you in the morning. It's just one night. I love you,' and smiled at him? That smile was supposed to make him feel safe, to know I'd come back. But today, he told me that's not how he saw it." I remember Jim saying he didn't want her smiling at customers in the showroom because it reminded him of that night. I think we were about to understand the real reason he didn't want that smile. Linda kept speaking, even with tears in her eyes. What he saw when I walked away was more than just disrespect or humiliation. That smile told him, "He's going to be better than you. You're not good enough. You're just ordinary. I was chosen by someone better." And then he wondered how he could ever be what I thought I wanted that night. It didn't matter to him that I didn't really want that. He said the moment I smiled at him was the lowest point in his life. After having 2 kids and being together for 12 years, he felt he still wasn't good enough. But it wasn't just that. The smile said, "Look who's with me tonight while you go to our hotel alone. Look who's keeping me company while you sleep by yourself. Look who's going to be with me tonight while you're alone in a strange room." I had no idea I hurt him so much. That smile was supposed to make him feel better, but instead it broke him. He told me he was only staying for the kids. He said I would always wonder what that night might have been like if I hadn't stopped. And he was right about that. I have wondered, just for a few seconds, what could have happened. Jim says that kind of thinking could turn into a fantasy. It isn't that now because I am focused on Jim and my marriage, but yes, I have thought about it. But I wouldn't tell him. That would hurt him again. And I know those thoughts would fade away like they did when I met Jim. That was when he got up and left. After Jim left, the counselor warned that thinking too much about what might have happened was dangerous, and I shouldn't go down that road. She gave me something to think about. Denise's mouth dropped open, and I almost did too. And I looked at Denise, and we both knew we had to think carefully about this. There was nothing helpful we could say. Linda really had made things worse with that smile. Now it was clear why he didn't want her around the showroom. Every time he saw her smile at customers, it reminded him that he wasn't good enough. I'm sure that's not what she meant, but it's how he felt, and he couldn't forget it. Denise comforted her while she cried. I felt useless. We said a few kind words, and after a while she calmed down. But Denise looked at me and slowly shook her head. The trouble had begun. When we got her steady enough to take her home, we had drunk too much, so I walked with her. It was only about 10 minutes. Denise must have phoned ahead because when we arrived, the door opened. Jim took her from me. Then he said, "You better get yourself a beer. You probably need one." "I know I do. I've waited for her to come home without one." "I'll be down in a minute." He carefully helped her take off her coat and guided her upstairs. After about 15 minutes, he came back with 2 bottles on the table. I had already drunk most of mine. "Did she tell you everything?" he asked. I just nodded. "It's bad, isn't it?" He took a long drink of his beer. He looked very tired, like he was carrying a heavy burden. I was trying to work through it when, during the session, the counselor asked Linda how she thought things were going. She said it was hard, but she believed we could fix it if we both tried. Then she said it was all her fault. Then she looked at me and smiled, and all those feelings came back. I just lost control and told her exactly what I was thinking from that smile. Now I don't know what to do. I don't see a way forward. Maybe it would help if she said she was sorry. That explained what he meant when he said, "It's what she's not said." Surely she must have said sorry. She said sorry, didn't she? I asked. No, not once. I'm sure she feels sorry, but she never said a full sorry for everything she caused me. You know the list, I won't go over it. It's too much, and it only hurts me again. Have you told her this? No, it has to come from her. If I ask her to say sorry, it feels like I'm forcing her. She has to say it on her own. Hey, I think I want another beer. Want one? That was the end of that talk. I thought, she can't be that unaware he's right. I'm sure she felt sorry after everything we'd seen and heard. I talked to Denise about it when I got home. We had both heard Linda say sorry, but never when Jim was around. Also, we weren't sure what exactly she was sorry for leaving Jim at the Red Heart, or the pain she caused him. Denise and I spent the night together, carefully and slowly, to remind each other of our love. The next morning, as Denise left for work, she said, "I'll fix this for the kid's sake." How was she going to do that? I found out at lunchtime. I saw Denise's car parked outside Linda's office down the road. I had no idea how long she'd been there. I was about to go see what was going on when the office door suddenly opened, and Linda came running out, not paying attention to where she was going. It was lucky the driver of the van nearby was alert, or she might have been hurt. I opened the door for her as she hurried in. "Where's Jim?" she asked. "He's in the warehouse getting the Jackson's kitchen ready to load, Il." But she was already rushing through the warehouse door. I followed after her. She saw Jim and ran to him. She threw her arms around him and cried, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused you. That was never what I wanted. I'm so sorry." He gently pulled away from her. Then he saw me, and I stepped back behind the shelf. Tears were streaming down her face. I was surprised she had any left. "Sweetheart, I'm really sorry for everything. I thought I already told you that. I know you don't like hearing it again, but I am so sorry." He held her at arm's length and just shook his head, which made her cry even more. After that, I sent them both home. I helped Dad finish loading the Jackson's kitchen. Denise came into the showroom, and I told her we might have to pick up Sean and Carrie from school. Jim and Linda had some things to work out. Everything had come to a head, and I sent them home. This would be a turning point for their marriage. We both sent Jim and Linda a message saying we could pick up the children and take them to our place. We asked if they wanted to collect them later, or if we should bring them home. Jim replied, "Thanks, I will let you know." We picked up the children and gave them their favorite meal, Auntie Denise's special lasagna. I played with them to try and tire them out, but they had more energy than I did. Soon, we got a message that Jim and Linda would come around at 7:30 to get the children. I told Denise they were coming together, and we hoped that was a good sign. It was. We watched them arrive, walking up our driveway holding hands. We wanted to ask how things had gone, but we didn't. As Jim put the children in the car, Linda told us they had shouted and argued with many hurtful words. After they were tired and calmer, they talked, cried, laughed, and made up. They knew things were not completely fixed and that more work was needed, but they had a plan and had gotten past the worst moment. At least Jim was staying. Then she added softly, "For now, so we can work stuff out." She sounded sad when she said that. They clearly knew things were still uncertain. When we walked out to the car, I heard Linda quietly say to Denise, "At least I've moved back into our bedroom." Later, Jim told me that Linda sat down and went through a list of things she was sorry for. She even said sorry for some things she hadn't actually done, but thought she had. It was true when she made a mistake. She kept saying sorry over and over like a broken record. 6 months later, the court case against Vale didn't help much. He mostly got away with it. The police and the prosecutors said the serious charges wouldn't hold, so a lesser charge was used instead. Vale's very expensive lawyer argued that Vale thought he was on his own land. It was not his property. It belonged to the county council. So he thought he was facing an angry football fan and was protecting his place. He was found guilty. The video showing Vale hitting Jim as he stood there made it clear. He had already said he was sorry and admitted what he did. He probably did this because his lawyer told him to. Photos showed that Vale could have just backed his car up and gone around mine. He didn't have to face Jim at all. No one talked about why this happened in the first place. Vale's lawyers didn't want people to know that he had been chasing married women. The prosecutors didn't want to blame Jim or make Linda feel worse. Denise and I thought the lawyers had reached some kind of deal. The punishment was disappointing. We hoped he would go to jail. The prosecutor said that was very unlikely since it was Vale's first time in trouble. Our hopes grew when the judge said a jail sentence was allowed by law. But when the judge added the word, however, we knew it was not going to happen. Vale got a big fine, but one he could easily pay. He also had to do community service, but because he was famous, it was probably something easy. Vale acted sorry until the judge left the courtroom. Then he smiled at us in a bad way. What a jerk. That was not the end of the story, though. The local newspaper published everything later, but left out Linda's name and the names of the other women who spoke up. Vale's contract and those of 2 teammates were not renewed. After playing in Europe for a short time, we think he moved to America. The Americans did not want his type of behavior with married women. A few years passed. Things got harder at the Northover home. The kids were growing up and spent most of their time away from home. One day, Linda came to find me. "I think I'm losing him," she said. "Why?" "He went to the lawyer yesterday. When I asked him about it, he said it was about a will. We always talked about that together before. And he took off his new wedding ring. He says he catches it when he's working, but he hasn't put it on the chain he usually wears. I think he's getting me ready to leave. He's also been going out all night every few months." She looked down. "He's done that since the court case. He might have found someone else. I don't know what to do." "Oh, no," I said. "Have you talked to him?" "No, I'm afraid to. I've done everything to make things better, but he's slowly pulling away from me since the kids aren't home as much. They're growing up. Soon they'll be gone for good." This time I asked him to go for a drink after work. I got right to the point. "Are you going to leave Linda when Carrie goes?" He looked down and whispered, "I don't know. I think she is still thinking about what happened that night, and that smile of hers still stays in my mind. It's getting better. I'm not angry anymore, and I know she's trying, but I just can't forget it." "Aside from that, is everything okay?" "It is. Everything is back to normal except for that. Sometimes I see her staring off into the distance, and I wonder what's on her mind. I ask, and she just smiles, kisses me, and says it's nothing. That's why I'm unsure." "Linda thinks you are seeing someone else when you stay out overnight, are you?" He shook his head. "I don't cheat." I asked quietly, "Where do you go?" "You know those 2 teammates of Vale's?" "Yes, I remember. They had accidents a few years ago, but at different times. Was that you?" He looked at me firmly, but said nothing. It was him. I heard that every few months they get small reminders of their time in the hospital. Nothing serious. Maybe a shadow or a note at their door with their name on it, or something left by their house. They can be hard to find sometimes, I think. I couldn't help much. But the next week, Denise came in excited after work at the builder's yard. "I have it. She needs a hero, and more than that, Jim needs to feel like a hero." I looked confused, but she felt sorry for me. The old Bonnie Tyler song came on the radio this morning, "Holding Out for a Hero." Jim feels like he doesn't matter because he couldn't stop Linda from leaving. He feels like he failed. The fact that he would have been hurt and no one would be there to care for Sean and Carrie if Linda had not come back, or that he would not have won against Vale's 2 friends that doesn't matter to him. He feels like he didn't try hard enough, like there was more he could have done. I don't like that song, but now I understood better. "I have an idea, please hear me out. I talked to Big Barry, you know, Clive Burrows. I did know him. I had met him at her work parties. He was a big guy, but very calm and kind." I looked puzzled. "He hates the name Clive. Barry is his middle name, and Big Barry suits him better. Keep this quiet. Vale tricked Barry's wife one night at Morrison's when they were out. Barry had the same problems as Jim, only he was outnumbered by 3. He didn't come out well. Nothing broken, just hurt deeply. Barry and his wife are still together because she convinced him that Vale wasn't a good person. Barry even tried to invite one of his friends over once. That made her angry. She left and called Barry. She had to take a taxi home because Barry wasn't able to drive after that night. She helped him get better. Vale seemed to enjoy bothering Big Barry more than being with his wife. "Well, if you're ready, I have an idea. Barry is ready too if it will help," she said. She told us her plan. It was risky, but I understood her point. If no one found out, it could work and save their marriage. Barry couldn't reach Vale since he went to America after spending a year in Europe. Things became difficult for him after the court case, but Big Barry would help Jim and Linda. We had a few years before the Northover children would leave home, but the sooner, the better. I convinced Mom and Dad to celebrate their 40th wedding anniversary. Since we were a family-focused company, we made it a work party. They agreed, and oddly enough, we offered to organize it for them. That's how we ended up in a hotel function room, not the Red Heart. Friends and most of the staff were there with their partners, even some suppliers. Everyone looked nice. Jim and I wore new suits. Mom and Linda looked beautiful in new dresses. Linda's dress was a bit more eye-catching. I think she wanted Jim to notice her. Denise wore my favorite dress, and I liked how it looked on her. Mom, Dad, Linda, Denise, and I sat at a table. Jim was at the bar with the other fitters. There was a buffet, so everyone was happy and full. A disco was playing soft music as planned, so people could talk and dance. The night was going well, although Jim and Linda rarely sat together. Just before 10 o'clock, Linda said she was tired and wanted to go to bed. She walked near the edge of the dance floor, which was slowly filling up. We saw her say something to Jim. They gave each other a quick kiss on the cheek, and then Linda headed toward the door. That's when a huge man stepped in front of her. He said loudly, "The most beautiful woman in town is leaving already. Can I have one dance?" He looked like a bigger version of Big Barry, but his hair was a different color and style. Jim turned to watch. He had never met Big Barry, but watched what happened. Linda looked up at the man and said, "No, thank you." She tried to step past him, but he moved to block her again. "Come on, it's just one dance. What do you have to lose?" he said. You could see that Linda was afraid. She stepped one way, and the man moved the same way to block her. Then he spread his arms wide and said, "Come on, just one dance and I can take you to a wonderful place." Linda just shook her head. Then, just as we hoped, Jim quickly crossed the dance floor and stood between Linda and the large man. That's when we noticed how big the man really was. My wife said no. What part of no don't you understand? What's going to happen now, little guy? Big Barry was not acting like we expected. Jim stood up straight, all 5'8" of him, and looked Big Barry, who was 6'2", right in the eyes. Jim said, "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my wife from people like you." I had never seen Jim so angry. I wouldn't want to mess with him right then. Big Barry stepped back and raised his hands. "Okay, sorry, man. I didn't mean any trouble. Maybe I just need a beer." He turned and walked toward the bar. The bartender didn't serve him. Our warning to the bartender was working. Big Barry stuck to his new plan, even if he didn't know there was one. "Forget you all, this party sucks anyway," he said, and then left the room. I looked at Jim and Linda. She was holding on to him, crying quietly. Jim had his arms tight around her, gently stroking her head. Denise leaned over to me and whispered, "He's saying it's okay, sweetheart." She was better at reading lips than I was. We had to keep it a secret that this whole thing was planned. Jim brought Linda back to our table and sat down. One of the workers gave Jim a beer and patted him on the shoulder. "Well done, mate." Linda looked at Jim and softly asked, "Will you dance with me?" He took her hand and led her to the dance floor. The DJ played a slow, soft song that felt romantic. Jim wrapped his arms around her and she rested her head on his shoulder. They danced a few times, then went back to the table and finished their drinks. Jim excused himself to the restroom. Linda looked at all of us and said with a small smile, "Excuse me, I need to go and surprise my hero." She left and stopped Jim as he came out of the restroom. She took his arm and gently led him toward the exit. He did not pull away. Denise's phone buzzed. She looked at it and showed me a message from Big Barry. It said, "How did that go?" I texted back, "Better than we hoped. You're amazing. Thank you so much." No one noticed the blonde woman leave soon after Big Barry. He had a couple of drinks to calm his nerves, but his wife would drive him home. The party finished around midnight and we all went to bed. As we settled in, Denise rested her head on my shoulder and said, I think with Barry's help, we did a great job. I answered, let's wait and see. It's too soon to tell. The next morning gave us part of the answer. When Jim and Linda came down for breakfast, they looked tired. But the way they held each other, it didn't seem like they had been upset or arguing. The real sign came when Jim came to work the next Monday morning. He seemed happy again, with a light step I hadn't seen in a long time. Linda needed something from the showroom, so she walked in, gave Jim a small wave, and smiled at him. Oh no, he just smiled back. I kept working but watched closely. Linda went upstairs to the offices, and I followed her. Wait, sis, you smiled at Jim and he didn't get angry? What's going on here? I asked. She said, it's something the counselor told me years ago, and I've been using it. She said, if you start thinking about what you missed that night, just think about what you would miss now if you hadn't been stopped. Your husband, your family, your home you and Jim built, and maybe losing them too. Put it in perspective. She smiled softly. That made me stop thinking about Vale forever. I told her, you should have told Jim that years ago. It would have saved him a lot of worry. I know, she said, but I told him last night. He noticed when I seemed far away, and I told him I was just thinking how lucky I was to have a second chance with him. She looked down and said quietly, sometimes, after I looked distant like that, I would take him upstairs. He thought it meant something bad. She looked up and said, it wasn't bad. It was love. I told him Saturday night I couldn't lose him. When I thought of Vale, I felt sick. Who was that man anyway? Where did he come from? I asked. I don't know. I think he just showed up uninvited, she replied. That uninvited man ended up getting a new kitchen 4 months later, almost at cost price, I know, because I installed it. When I visited, he didn't seem as big as before. He said he had borrowed his big brother's suit and tried to look bigger. It was like a disguise. If anything went wrong, he planned to blame his brother. When Mom and Dad retired, we sent them on a cruise to the Caribbean. We all went to see them off. I heard Jim tell Linda, well, do that when we retire. Then I saw him kiss her. Marcus Vale paid his fine. He had plenty of money, so it wasn't a problem. His community service was easy, just as we thought it would be. But at the time, football was getting bad attention. A few players in the North were involved in a serious case, and the Football Association wanted to improve its image quickly. Vale's contract was not renewed, and the other 2 players linked to Jim's case also lost their contracts. Vale stayed in Europe for a year before moving to America. There, he had an accident away from the field, which hurt his left knee and hip. After that, he became a football commentator on a well-known TV channel. He spoke with a British accent that everyone liked, though he was just pretending. Later, we heard that one day he was found tied to a tree by a road, with his nose and ears hurt badly. There was talk that another part of him wasn't quite the same as before. Even after having a broken knee and hip, he didn't seem to learn his lesson. The Americans didn't accept his trouble. Good for them. He went back to the UK, where he still had his big house. He became quite lonely, and people said the cost of fixing his nose and ears with surgery had taken a lot from his money.